So the theme this month, as Kim mentioned earlier, is this thing called You, which comes from this little bitty book by Dr. Ernest Holmes, one of the smaller ones that he wrote, but just chock full of wonderful, wonderful information. And today my topic is, if only you were more like me. And you've heard me use that phrase before. I mention it ever so often in discussing how we interact with the rest of the world. So now here's about 25 minutes of that today in this talk. If only you were more like me. If each of us had $1, say, for every time we've said that, or we've implied that through our opinions and our attitudes toward others, we'd probably be zillionaires. We would be demonstrating financial abundance in our lives. Well, so much for that approach to life. Because it wouldn't last. It would never last. It would never last because at the core, at our own deepest level, we would know that it's bearing false witness to the generosity of the universe. Or, to put it another way, you can't build a sound house on a weak foundation or a shifting of the ground underneath, just as you cannot build yourself up by tearing anybody else down. If it were true that you could build yourself up by tearing someone else down, then it would also be true that someone else could build themselves up by tearing you down. And you know that's not true. So stay with that thought, because that's at the core of what we'll explore today. Our series this month titled This Thing Called You, and we're looking at how we grow and shift our own consciousness without beating up on somebody else's. Last week I talked about the human experience, how in our own lives we must realize to be positive, to be loving, to be caring and kind to ourselves. Then we must always let something good be said in our thoughts about our own selves, about our own intentions, about our own authenticity. And we talked about what being authentic means in our lives. Being authentic means being genuine, being real, not automatic or mechanical. Being authentic means acknowledging that we have fears, that we experience confusion on occasion, that we worry. But being authentic also means that we recognize our source of our power to resolve our problems. Being authentic means allowing the universal force of God and good to find ways that bring us through. Ways that we would never even think of in our ordinary mind if we always stay in our ordinary mind. Being authentic means that we remember that God's universal intelligence sees it all, knows it all, draws on all of it. Oh yeah, now I remember. If this universal force called God created it all, then surely it must know it all, including ways to offer me, to offer each of us, ways to deal with whatever situation we're facing in any moment. I just need to be open in my mind and in my heart to receive those messages, those ideas, because as I am open in my mind and my heart, I experience a shift in my consciousness. I experience the human in me coming together with the spiritual. That's that alignment, that centering, that focusing in on the essence of my being. I become metaphysical, beyond the physical, as I realize that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And last week, we also addressed the realization that being authentic is accepting that where we are right now in our lives and in our spiritual growth is okay, is acceptable, is the culmination of all that we have learned and done up to this moment. It may not be where you aspire to be in your life, but it's perfectly okay right now. You need not ever feel that you are somehow not good enough, not smart enough, not rich enough, not tall enough, all of those things that are just so not true. You may intend to be more of all those things, and if so, good for you. Just know that to get there, you have to be here first. Fully, completely, and honestly here, right now. Because this is your stepping stone to the next level. This is what having a human experience is all about. It's why we showed up in this dimension, here, in this life, in this consciousness. So today, I'd like to move us from where we were last week to another level in this thing called life. I'd like to talk about what is available for us to draw on at no one else's expense, and without expecting that everyone around us will do it our way. At the beginning of this talk, I said you can't build yourself up by tearing someone else down. If it were true that you could build yourself up by tearing someone else down, then it would also be true that someone else could build themselves up by tearing you down. And you know that's not true. Here's an example of how we find ourselves pulled into these kinds of situations that tempt us to become better at someone else's expense. I'm standing in the checkout line at the KTA. The person ahead of me waits until all her groceries have been rung up, and then she says, "Oops, I forgot. I have coupons. I forgot to give you my coupons." So she rummages around in her purse while I shift from one foot to another. I rearrange my groceries on the belt. Now I begin to recite the names of all the presidents of the United States forward and backward. Then she can't find her wallet because it's buried under all those coupons. But when she finally finds it, she doesn't have enough cash. Ooh, you saw that coming, didn't you? So she has to write a check. She's not in their computer, so everyone in that line must wait even longer while the manager is found to approve the check. Anybody else ever experienced this? Anybody? Look whose hand went up. Ever been anybody like that? Oh, so truthful. So, at one time or another, who among us has not experienced something like this? If not in the grocery store, then perhaps in a department store, at the gas station, maybe your favorite pizza place. And the whole time this is unfolding, right in front of me, I'm thinking, if only she were more like me, this wouldn't be happening. Well, obviously she's not. And my frustration, my irritation, my anger will not make her so. But it does change me, doesn't it? It makes my blood pressure rise. It makes me carpet the checker when it's my turn to check out. It makes me criticize everything I see for the rest of my trip. It might even give me a headache. And I ask you, does that lady care? No, she doesn't care. She doesn't even know. So what's the message here? My reaction to someone else's individuality doesn't change them. It changes me. And in this instance, it changes me in ways that beat me up. That disturb and perhaps even harm me. Now, how stupid is that? Well, it's not really stupid, my friends. It's a lack of understanding, which results in a tendency to engage in behaviors without really thinking about the effect they have on me. And it's an attempt to change a situation I don't like by trying to change outside influences. Believe me, as long as there are coupons, this will happen in front of us. As long as there is money, this will happen in front of us. As long as there are people, this will happen in front of us. And as long as we cling to that misperception that our displeasure or anger will change those situations in other people, the reactions that I described, or others like them, will continue to happen to us, to you, to me. So here's the message. Trying to get somebody to be more like you so you can be happy, rich, thin, beautiful, or whatever you desire is giving up your own precious self. It's giving yourself over to anyone, anything, any outside influence in the moment in order to validate or rationalize your actions. And the danger in that is that in every situation you are constantly pulled in different directions. You're constantly reacting to different sources of dissatisfaction. In fact, you may even be out looking for new sources to make responsible for all these challenges in your life. And when we do this, when we look at all the energy that we are directing away from growing ourselves in nurturing positive ways, then rather we look at ways we can find to make ourselves victims of someone or something outside ourselves. In all of this, what we're doing is we're giving away our own awesome power. So what can we do to diffuse this tendency we have? Well, I, for one, finally learned to carry a copy of the Science of Mind magazine in my backpack whenever I go shopping. And that way I can read while I'm in one of those checkout lines. It also brings my attention here and not to the stack of coupons. So, when I carry something like this to fill my mind with, then it's something that nourishes me. And I feel that my time is being spent in a positive and nurturing way. Now, in today's world, you can even download books and magazines on your smartphone if you choose. So you have downloaded materials that you can do the same thing that I do with Science of Mind magazine. I have a commitment to read it every month, and I never fail to get it read, carrying it around in my backpack all month. So the point is that we have choices even in situations that may seem like we're captive to somebody else's behavior. I see kids with their Game Boy units. I see adults with PDAs. I see teens with CD players, and practically everyone with the ever-present cell phone. I even carry an electronic crossword puzzle touchscreen with me sometimes. It has 1,000 favorite puzzles from the New York Times stored in its memory. I could stand in line for several lifetimes getting those puzzles solved. Now, if these seem like simplistic answers to the problems you experience with other people's behaviors, I'd suggest that you too find a myriad of ways to entertain and nourish your spirit in situations that up until now have pulled your chain. Other than, please don't be doing any of these things while you're driving. Not a good idea. There are some other things that we'll talk about that you can use in that case. Wayne Moore, and I'll have to bring that CD in for you to hear. Wayne Moore wrote a song called Never Do a Treatment While You're Driving Your Car. And it's hysterical. I'll bring it and play it for you next Sunday. So, well, certainly not every issue with the behavior of others is as humorous or as minor as these examples that I've just used with you. There are instances in our lives or in the lives of those we care about that have much more emotion and impact. But this principle is still a valid one. We must become what we choose to see. And we can only do that by example. Each of God's creations has the choice to become whatever he or she chooses. As each of us demonstrates that in our own lives, we can then create clear, nurturing, compelling examples for others to observe and to consider in their own lives. That may enable others to change and grow, or it may not. But in this process of awakening and awareness, we ourselves have changed and become happy, become fulfilled and comfortable in our own skins. At our ministers' conference one year, Dr. David Walker, who at that time was the pastor at the Los Angeles Center for Spiritual Living, said this: "We must remember that for every one act of violence, cruelty, or abuse, there are 1,000,000 or more acts of kindness, of loving support, and caring. Each of us can choose each day to make a personal dedication to that which is good and right and just." And what we also know is that we can only do this for ourselves, through ourselves, as ourselves. Remember the words of Gandhi: "We must be the change we wish to see in the world." Which is dramatically different, isn't it, than wishing if only you were more like me. Because until we make changes in our own lives that support love, kindness, prosperity, peace, happiness, wishing someone else were more like us would create more issues to deal with, don't you know? And once we make the changes in our lives that support love, kindness, prosperity, happiness, peace, then that is the face we show to the world. That is who we become. And what someone else does, says, thinks, no longer impacts or damages us in negative ways. The side effect of your love, your happiness, your kindness, your prosperity, your peace, however, is that the world is changed by it. Maybe not in ways immediately evident to you, but unquestionably your uplifted consciousness makes a difference. So, in closing, I'd just like to reiterate that the world and humanity does not change because any one of us utters the words, "If only you were more like me." The voices of violence and disharmony have not convinced me that I want war, torture, slavery. Have they convinced you? Of course not. We choose not to be like that. So what does not to be like that mean? What does that represent? How do we express that? What I am convinced of, however, is that I do choose, that what I do choose to be does not harm others, does not coerce others, does not diminish others. What I do choose for myself is that which the Creator chose as well, to model and to exemplify that which is good, that which is just, that which is loving. What I do choose for myself is that I have opportunities to model and exemplify divine Spirit's attributes. Whether it's in the checkout line at the grocery store, with my family, in the community, in the world community, or with humanity in general. Life is happening right here in front of us, right now, within us, every moment, every day, every breath we take. Each of us has the choice and the chance to make our lives happen in whatever way we choose. So why not make your life happen as if you were more like God in every life experience? Because that's the truth of you. You are like God because you are that which God is at the level of your understanding of it. The unity and the wholeness of this universal creative power is exemplified in countless displays of individual humanness. We're individuals, yes, and yet we are linked together by our common origin and source. It was never intended that we all be exactly like each other, because each of us possesses that unique and individualized being, that gift that we have come to bring. But we spring from a common source, and we're all governed by the same universal organizing intelligence. That's the constant. So the next time you're tempted to utter those words, if only he or she was more like me, rejoice that it's not so. After all, that same person could be looking at you and thinking, if only you were more like me. Rejoice that that's not so either. Instead, know that we can honor each other's dignity, each other's inherent worth, and each other's individuality. That is cause for rejoicing. And so it is.
So it is.